I think the seafood industry also has to put more into marketing. I think that's important, and not to just be inside the walls of the seafood industry, if you understand what I mean. Open up, let new people come in, connections in other industries as well, so you can share more. And from that, I think we will grow in the future.
So hello everyone, I am Victor Justi and welcome to another episode of the Wisenetix Podcast, where we explore leadership, innovation, and communication in agribusiness with voices that are transforming the industry. Today, we are diving into the world of aquaculture, a sector that plays a crucial role in the future of sustainable food production. Our guest is Andrew. He is head of communications at ScaleAQ, one of the world's largest producers of equipment for aquaculture, operating in over 30 countries and helping shape how we produce food from the oceans. Andrew brings over 2 decades of experience in journalism, communication, and seafood industry leadership. Andy, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here.
That's okay. So let's start with you, Andrew. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did your career begin? And what led you from journalism and media into the world of seafood and aquaculture?
Well, I grew up on an island with ocean everywhere around, which is quite normal when you grew up on an island. And my family were into the sea. Some parts of the family were fishermen. And I grew up with my first job as a fisherman. Working with some of the friends of my family. There was also at that time starting up with farming, aquaculture, not heavily as we have today, but this was back in the early 90s. It had started. Some of them had quite huge problems. I knew that this island was, it was very necessary that it should live off the ocean. I knew that, and it put it in my mind from the early start. But then my mind was not focused to work with that. I wanted to be kind of tell stories because I really like to meet people. I really like to tell stories. So I was from the early ages into a local radio station. Helped me learning a little bit. But so my way was kind of like I really wanted to go into the journalism career. So that's why I joined in then, and I took education and went to, and I was lucky to get a work in the Norwegian broadcasting, which is the main public service channel in Norway. And I worked there for 13 years. And the last years I worked there, I was in charge of fisheries and aquaculture. So that was sort of, I came back to actually something I grew up with. And I saw also that to do stories about that, that's quite interesting.
Wisenetix turns podcast airtime into brand authority. We don't sell ads, we elevate voices. Curious how far your voice can go to become a reference in the industry and attract more leads? Scan the QR code and discover how we can turn your expertise into unmatched brand authority. Let's transform expertise into influence, starting now.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And I was wondering here, having working in both media and corporate environments, what do you see as the main differences, and what skills have helped you succeed in both worlds?
Today with journalism, I see that one of the big issues and the problems, I would say, if you allow me to say that, is that it's difficult for a journalist to really get into one topic, especially if you cover a lot of different topics. If you one day you get up and you get to work and you should cover a big accident at one of the highways, and then next day you should cover some elderly people who don't get help when they are old, and moving on from the next to the next to the next. Quite a lot of journalists do that today. And they also sit on a desk. They are not out. They don't meet people. And from my point of view, I think it's if you're going to cover a topic, it's quite important that you actually dive into it, that you get into the bottom of it, and you actually know something yourself. So that's why I also, when I was told that, well, you're not supposed to work with fisheries anymore in your daily work, then I started figuring out what I'm going to do now. Then I moved out to the other side. Some journalists might say that it's the dark side, because they would say that communicators try to avoid and to keep away from the publicity. I would not say that, because I want to be, in my view, I want to be open. I want to tell stories. Of course, I want to get in contact with journalists. I want to show them that, well, maybe it's a little bit different from what you think it is, but come on, let's go out and see yourself.
Basically, you are saying that in the journalism environmental, you're supposed to be neutral all the time. So when you get doing communications for a company, they are saying that probably are going to tend to be partial or
of course,
commercial, something.
They would say that, of course, I'm a part of it. I'm selling products, of course, and stuff like that. So you have to be aware of that. But and you should always, as a journalist, you should try to be neutral. I will say that that's really important. But I would also say that I would really wish that more journalists would have time to dive into something, and would also not from the very start only think that, well, I've heard about this or that, and I think it is this or that. And then I made my story from, if you understand, if I'm thinking about, let's say it, I'm sitting at the airport now, and let's say that if you, for example, find out that the light system at the airport is not good enough, you heard some stories about that, and then you made your whole story from the early point start, when you start to dig into it, and then you maybe find out that, well, it's actually not the light system, it's something else, but you still keep on the light issue problem, and that is something I would wish that many journalists should have be more open from the start. That's something you actually might learn when you get to the other side.
They heard something about some subject, and they don't know exactly, inside of that to get a conclusion, but they assume something, and I can understand what they're saying. That makes sense to me. And let's talk about the ScaleAQ. So for the listeners who may not know the company, could you just introduce the company and what the company does, what role it plays in the global aquaculture?
Of course, Scale Aquaculture is it's actually 45 years. It's today a merge between 3-4 companies. But the owners and the main and the biggest one of those started up for 45 years ago, back in small islands outside the middle Norway. They started with thinking about how can we help farmers to build their farm the best way. So they started to produce pans. The ring you have, or you can see at the top, and when you have the net under, they started to build that, and then it developed from that into more or less everything that you need when you do aquaculture, except the fish and the feed. So we are more or less everything. If you're going to start in Brazil, where you are with fish farming, then you have to say, oh, well, what do I need? Oh, well, I need this, I need pans, I need rings, I need lights to show where I am on the sea, I need cameras, I need to lift up and lift down system and all that sort of stuff. So we have all this, but not fish and not feed. So that's what we are, and we are into, you can do that not only in salmon, but you can do it in trout. We sell equipment for cod farmers who sell for other species as well around the world.
Oh, that's awesome. So in our website, there's a strong phrase, personally saying to me, which is shape the future of aquaculture. What does this mission mean to you personally, and how does it influence the company's approach, to innovation, sustainability?
Well, a good question. We say that we are aquaculture also, and we want to shape it. That means that we all always want to be ahead. We want to look at the solutions to find what's the next step, what kind of new technology could be ahead of us. We are, in everything we do, we test in a huge tank inside. We do a miniature scaling down then, of course, and putting everything that you need to find out, is this what about high waves? Will this be problematic if you have too high waves and all that sort of stuff? So we are ahead always to try to see if we can find new solutions to help the farmers for the best farming.
That's amazing. And Andrew, I remember the first time we have talked that you mentioned to me that the company operates in many countries, if I'm not wrong, more than 30. From Chile to Vietnam, Norway, of course, and beyond. So in terms of communication, why would you say that it's the biggest challenges, especially leading kind of a global message across so different cultures?
Of course, culture. When you are in so many countries, it's different cultures, and of course it's language as well. Not everyone do know English so good, so you have to be aware of that, of course. But it's also a melting society. We're melting together. As we say, we are aquaculture. So that's fine. We do have good solutions for internal communication. So we publish stories so they could be on screens for everyone who work inside the company. So we should share things, what's good. Well, this is a story about our new product. This is a story about a new big deal contract that we made in here or there. So it's possible, and of course it's totally something else now than it was 30, 40 years ago. It's just to pick up your phone and send a message to my good colleague Carlos in Chile. And of course, I should not do it early in the morning in Norway, because then in the middle of the night for him. But I have to. That we have also time set it up at my office, so I can see always what's the time in Chile and Vietnam.
The good part is that you're in the middle, so for the Vietnam they are probably night, and the Chile early morning. Oh, I gotcha. That's great, Andrew. And I remember that you have mentioned that the aquaculture today represents around 7% of what people are eating that comes from the ocean, And at the same time, it's the most sustainable protein sources available in the ocean. Why do you think that it represents such a small share in the global diets?
That's a very good question. I've been thinking quite a lot about why is it like this. And of course, the huge producers of meat in the world today. If you look around, what do you think of when you're driving around on the highway? You see McDonald's, you see Burger King, you see pizzas, stuff like that. That's what most people do know about. And it's quite strange, actually, because if you look 100 to 300 years ago, we were more connected to the ocean then. But then something has happened. We are more basing on land-based and meat. They've been much more successful of doing that. Maybe it's because they've been better to develop products. For example, if you look at the chicken industry, just imagine 20 years ago, we went to the shop and we bought the whole chicken. Now you have many different products. You have wings, you have you have fillets, and the fish industry has not been so huge, so successful. That might be one of the reasons. Um, so we just have to be looking more into it. And as you also mentioned, of course, 7% of what we eat is only from the ocean. And if the prognosis, if it is right what UN tells us, that we will be more people on this earth, it's just going like this. We have to find new solutions. We have to do it in a more environmental way, and you can't then only do farm land based production. You have to look more out in the ocean, and then you might have to go deeper in the ocean. You have to try to farm different species. So that's what make me more optimistic about the future.
Okay, so as you were saying, that I just wanted to conclude that 2/3 of our planet are water, are ocean. So people need to pay attention and to bring sources of food from there, because there's much more water than land, and it's obvious, but in practical, seems that not that much so far, right?
That's true. That's true. And of course, things are happening. If you look back 15 years ago, you wouldn't eat sushi on an airport. Now you can go on an airport and you get sushi, and you can get sushi also in small villages around in the middle of nowhere. And of course, this sushi, it's mainly from the ocean, and which is also quite funny is that, well, most of it is salmon, and most of it is from Norway. So that's very. It's been a huge success for us as well for doing aquaculture. The reason why we are top leading in aquaculture today is, of course, the story about the sushi. So, and then it was actually I have to tell you this because that was just a coincidence. It was some. It was a delegation from Norway who went over to Japan, and they were going over there to sell mackerel and herring and stuff like that. So they were not, but then it has just briefly started with aquaculture in Norway, and one of them have heard that maybe we should bring also a little bit salmon into Japan, because we know that they actually like to eat this fish raw. Maybe that's something for them. Let's just try. So they put together a box with a little bit salmon, went over to Japan, and did their business with mackerel and herring and stuff like that. And then they just got into a connection with a chef, and well, hey, this is salmon from Norway. Do you think this will be? And from that, this has been going like this. So it's a coincidence. It's quite a funny story, actually.
Wow, I love it, the story. And yes, it's fun because you mentioned the sushi, you mentioned the Japanese food, and that's exactly what I'm going to say, because this culture kind of explodes worldwide. And why do you think that it's driving this growth, Andrew? You think it's because it's a fancy thing? It's something, I don't know, it's just a trend, or it's because people are getting more known, more familiar with that, or they just like it? What would you say?
Of course, there's several reasons. I think one of the main reasons is, of course, look at the ocean. That's the thing that it's trendy, of course, and it's cool, as you say, but also it's environmental. It's more healthy for your body as well, both environmental and healthy. And to eat, if you just think yourself, if you've had a meal of sushi after a long day at work, and you get some sushi, and you after you finish with that, you're not as lazy then. You're not as, oh no, I need a little nap, kind of like, you know what I'm talking about. But if you look into if you have had a really big portion of meat, then you're much more tired and you would have a nap after it. So that's something also. It's more healthy and it's more nice. And of course, this has been more successful for one of the reasons. But also, of course, the environmental issue. And it's quite easy to make as well.
But I think considering salmon, for example, it could be even more popular if we can make it more cheaper for people in general. Because usually, bringing the example of Brazil where I am, if you're gonna go buy meat in comparison to salmon, for example, meat is much more accessible than the salmon. So to increase the sales of both of them, you have to be more competitive. But of course,
That's true, but
products.
I think it will come more and more and more. It will be other species as well. It will not only be salmon. I think it maybe might be the next thing is they talk about kingfish. Maybe that's a good thing. In Norway, we now have figured out how to farm cod. That's a really delicious product. The main one, the main product that you actually use in your bacalhau. So that could be a solution as well. But I think also others. You just have to, but it takes time, of course, to do something that's been wild farmed. It's not only done in 1 year. It's probably several years, 5, 10, 15 years until from the start until it will become a success. So it takes time and a lot of money.
You need to test to get traction and be resilient to reaching there. It makes sense.
Build up marketing stuff and all that sort of stuff as well.
And as a communicator, Andrew, how do you approach telling good stories in seafood?
Wow, that's a huge and good question. It's, I think, one of the big. What actually, when you hear about and you read a story, what is actually touching you? That's always something I keep in my head. I want to bring stories that can actually touch people to see how they really fell in love with what they're doing, and how this is made. For example, on the countryside, it's been many stories in Norway about this has been a huge successful thing with doing aquaculture because it's meant something for people. They could have still be living there. They have a work. The company grows. They buy all their products from other companies around in the region. So that's also important for them as well. So those kind of stories to involve and to see what this actually means, that's quite necessary for me to bring in. So I want to tell people that this is important, and I also want to fight more for bringing more healthy products to the world. I think that's also a good thing to work more with.
No, I totally agree with you. And it makes sense to me because I have spent the past 7 years in another city here in Brazil, which was an island. So the seas were everywhere, and the culture of that people, it's very connected with fishes and the food that comes from the sea. So I can see the difference because I was born in São Paulo, which is an hour from the sea, and it's already different. The way that people look to seafood, to fishes, and all of that stuff. Thinking about that, Andrew, how to overcome that? I mean, the people that lives in middle of the countries, far away from the oceans, they don't have that connection with seafood. They don't have like, oh, it remembers me something in my childhood or something like that. Is that anything that can be created? What would you say?
Well, it's difficult, of course, because they're not used to eat as much fish. They might have also problems to get fish in the local store if they're far away from the ocean, like you do. Brazil is a huge country and it's far away in the middle until the coast, so I can understand that. But as I said earlier, it's only 15 years ago since you didn't have sushi at the restaurant close to you. So it will develop, it will be more, and of course it will build up logistics to make this easier and to transport it, cooling systems with transportation. So that will be built up. I think there are possibilities. The meat industry has done it. It's now probably to eat McDonald's or Burger King in any small village or with some level of inhabitants. So it will be in the future, I think, because as I said again, remember the 7%. So we have to change this. It can't be like that in the future.
Oh, yes, it's a good argument. When you mention, for example, McDonald's and Burger King, they have like 70 years old companies. But what before that? What people usually do it? It makes sense. The people's behavior is something that marketing do really influence on that. So bringing more a conscience to that educational information. I mean, it's going to help that. That's. I agree with that. And what advice would you give to other professionals and companies that are struggling to communicate effectively about science-based or in technical industries in the aqua?
Tell the stories about how things is changing. Find the thing about how did you go from this level to the next one? What did you struggle with? How did you face it? How did you solve it? And the good stories that's there. There's always a good story. There's always a good story, but maybe one guy from he had to, maybe there's a story about he had to move from another country because of a war. For example, now in Europe, we have the Ukrainian issue, and we could bring in people from the Ukraine, we could give them jobs. Maybe he came from a story which is difficult for him. He came to the countryside in Norway. Now he's working. That could be a story. It could be a story about how we just started with two empty hands, and you found out that we should do this or that. It's all about creativity, I think, and think and ask around. What would you like to hear from us? What would you be interested in, and try to find out then, maybe this story, I can bring it and try to sell out.
Yes, and usually the real stories are the best. We just need to pay attention on how valuable they are and bring them.
And real people. To be honest, I think if you should go also to do marketing campaigns, my lesson and one of the things we did some years ago is that we put up a huge campaign, and we brought in, instead of just commercial, people who work in commercial and who is not real. It's just someone you find in a catalog and you put them up. We brought in real people who had a story that was much more successful, because then, I know this guy. Who's this? Oh, yeah, what he says, that's true. Yeah. So that's also a good thing.
It creates more connection and bring people close to you when they are hearing you, right? That's awesome. Andrea, changing a little bit, here at Wisenetix, we often talk about the power of thought leadership, and we use communication to educate and inspire. From your experience, how important is building brand authority in the aquaculture sector? And how does the ScaleAQ work to establish credibility and the leadership in this space?
You have to be real. We work quite a lot with that. We have to be efficient. We have to be ahead, as we spoke about a little bit earlier. And for us, honesty is up there. It is quite important. And to be honest, and to be good about it, to be open, and to also listen if you get critic. That's also quite important. I think that's something you have to always put up high in your profile and as a company. That's quite important. And for me as well, I've always learned that to be open is very, very important. If you face problems, if you have an accident, be open about it. Don't try to put it away and to hide it, because in one way or another, people will get to know. And if they hear it from him or her or someone else, this might be a totally different story than it actually is if you were open from the start and told it. So that's something I think it's something I would like to share and give away to others, that if you do a company, put openness at a high level.
Yes, it's awesome. And to getting to the close part here, how do you see the communication influencing the future of the seafood industry? I mean, not just for companies, but how the society views ocean-based food in general.
I think there will be huge possibilities. And to be honest, I think also the seafood industry has to work more with this, because we've not been good enough. Of course, it's difficult to fight with budgets that they do have. Again, as I mentioned, in McDonald's or Burger King or IKEA, they have so strong power, and people do know, but they have been building this in decades and in years. We have to also, I think, the seafood industry also has to put more into marketing. I think that's important. And not to just be inside the walls of the seafood industry, if you understand what I mean. Open up, let new people come in, get some connections in other industries as well, so you can share more. And from that, I think we will grow in the future. I know we will grow, but if we are even more open and we can share more, and we can also listen and see what others have done, I think it will be more easy.
There's as leading the communications where you are, there's a great journey ahead. There's a lot of stuff to be done, right?
There is, absolutely, but the future is quite bright. There's so much. Just imagine if you ask someone what is the biggest top, what is the highest mountains around the world. Of course, everyone knows about Mount Everest, but what do we actually know about the sea?
And I totally agree with that, because the human being, the mankind, they know less about the oceans than, I mean, the galaxies and outside. We reach the moon, but we don't even know how deep the ocean is really. Okay, so there's another world under the water that we don't even know what's going on right now over there.
I know we have more, with 3D, with scanning, you can see more, you can see what's underneath where you walk around, you can see more so they will be easier also in the future to know more about. And it's very dark down there as well. We need light to light up to see, and it's just so many things that's interesting in the oceans. So
and
I think that will be. Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure as well. So it's not easy. I mean, Elon Musk is trying to reach Mars and to create a population over there, but we can even reach as deep as we can here in the Earth.
But also, I think the most important thing about when we go further down in the sea is to do it environmentally. That's so important to do it and to learn from the mistakes that we've done on the land. And we should not do the same mistakes when we're going and farming in the ocean. That's really, and we should have good, successful legislation. Governments, they have to be involved in building up this everywhere in every country around, and it should be good, because that's also quite important to build in the future.
The last one here, something most people don't know about you.
Actually, very to keep my head away from everything. When I've been a long day at work, I go out in my garden and I actually grow a lot of different vegetables. I don't think so many actually know that about me, and I'm really into it. I really think it's so lovely to see flowers from a little seed to getting up to become something beautiful, and to grow cucumbers, tomatoes. I have a small garden house. That's so nice.
That's way to bring the peace back to our minds after a long day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Andrew, thank you very much for this great conversation. Thanks for sharing your insights, your journey, your passion, and the sustainable seafood. Before we wrap up here, if our listeners want to follow you, your work, and to learn more about ScaleAQ, where's the best place to find you?
To find me is ScaleAQ.com. ScaleAQ.com, and to follow me on social media, it's my last name is Haram, which in Arabic means forbidden. So I call myself No Way Haram. So it's kind of a funny thing to do. So just Google that and you find me on social media as well.
That's perfect. Thanks very much for joining us today.
All the best.
And to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with your colleagues and your friends in the agribusiness and the food industries. Until next time, keep innovating, stay curious, and keep shaping the future of the agriculture with us. Have a great day.